What is up, guys? Marcus from Perspective Sports, and today we'll be talking about the division with, I'm not even going to say arguably, the most quarterback talent in the league, and that's the NFC South. And this division got a whole lot more competitive when Tom Brady decided to take his talents not to South Beach, but to Tampa Bay. And a few notable guys joined him. And so, with that being said, we're obviously going to start today's video by talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who had a slightly below average season, finishing 7-9 last year, but that's about where you expected them to be. But this year, we're expecting a lot more. Since they signed quarterback Tom Brady, tight end Rob Gronkowski, offensive tackle Joe Hagg, running back Leonard Fournette, they re-signed defensive end Jason Pierre-Paul, they franchise tagged Shaquille Barrett, and re-signed cornerback Ryan Smith. We have big expectations for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year, and in the draft, they did very good as well. Drafting offensive tackle Tristan Wirfs in the first round out of Iowa, safety Antoine Winfield out of Minnesota in the second round, and they had a really good fourth round pick in wide receiver Tyler Johnson out of Minnesota. And when you look at the Bucs schedule, their first 6 games will see them play at New Orleans versus Carolina, so 2 division games right off the bat. Then they play at Denver versus the LA Chargers, at Chicago, and versus Green Bay. And so I don't think the Bucs will do fantastic out of the gate. I think they may actually stumble out of the gate due to the fact that this offseason isn't normal. Like I said in my last video, there's no preseason, inter-squad scrimmages. You're not playing against other people. And teams with a lot of turnover year over year in terms of roster, I think are going to struggle, especially early on. But I do think the Bucs will be very good this year. I mean, they have a great coach, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, a deep tight end core with Gronk. They have a deep running back core, a great coach in Bruce Arians. So this team is going to be very good this year. But I think they're going to struggle out of the gate. The secondary is still kind of a concern for me. But I do think Tampa Bay will be a very good football team. But let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. And in my opinion, don't get it twisted. This is still the best team in the NFC South. That's just my opinion. They've won the division the last 3 years in a row. Not that it has anything to do with this upcoming year, but just some background. They're going for their 4th straight division title. And let's not forget how good this Saints roster actually is. And then they went out this offseason and made some very solid moves. It may not have been the highlight, grab the attention from the big media, we got the right articles about this moves, but they made a lot of solid moves to solidify the roster even further, signing wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders, safety Malcolm Jenkins, safety DJ Swearinger. We all know they brought back Drew Brees. They re-signed lineman Andreas Pete, re-signed defensive end David Onyemata. These are really good moves for the New Orleans Saints, and I'm very, very concerned that people may be overlooking the Saints. And that may sound a bit ridiculous, but the Saints will get the first crack at the new-look Bucs, and I think they'll beat them because, again, the Saints didn't have a whole lot of turnover year over year like the Bucs did. The Bucs still have to find that in-game chemistry, that 100% chemistry. And so I think the Saints they're catching the Bucs at the right time, being the first game of the season. But when you look at their schedule, they have a few tough patches. Weeks 3 will see them play versus Green Bay, followed by Week 4 at Detroit. Detroit has a tough defense. I don't think Detroit will have the best record, but I think they'll be very competitive in all of their games, or most of their games, let me say it like that. And then weeks 8 through 10 is at Chicago, at Tampa Bay, versus San Francisco. Weeks 14 through 16 is at Philly, versus Kansas City, and versus Minnesota, who they historically just flat out struggle with. They just cannot beat Minnesota. And so they're going to have some tough stretches they have to get through themselves, but I do think this Saints team is very good. Then you have the Atlanta Falcons, and they've got it rough. They lost some talent. They lost cornerback Desmond Trufant, running back Devontae Freeman, tight end Austin Hooper, but they did bring in some talent. Tight end Hayden Hurst, defensive end Dante Fowler, running back Todd Gurley. In the draft, they did okay. It's one of those drafts that I just need to see him play before I can really formulate an opinion. They drafted cornerback A.J. Terrell in the first round and defensive lineman Marlon Davidson out of Auburn in the second. And I don't think the Falcons are bad. I don't think this is a bad football team. I think it's a decent football team. But when you take into account the division they play in, and then their schedule, the first quarter of the season will see them play versus Seattle, at Dallas, versus Chicago, at Green Bay. That's brutal. And then they have to play the Saints 2 times in 3 weeks, between weeks 11 and 13. And then they have to play Tampa Bay to finish the season 2 times in 3 weeks. And with the Chiefs in between that. So when you look at their schedule, it's like, sheesh. The Falcons roster, I don't think, is good enough to withstand that kind of schedule. I think they have a good roster. I think that they're going to be competitive in a lot of these games, but I just can't see a world where their record is very good. Finally, we have the Carolina Panthers, and this team lost a lot of their a lot of their big time names. They lost quarterback Cam Newton, obviously. They also lost tight end Greg Olsen, defensive end Mario Addison, and cornerback James Bradbury. But they did bring in some good players. They brought in quarterback Teddy Bridgewater, and man, I'm hoping he does well. I mean, if there's a guy that I just root for to succeed in this league, you really root for Teddy Bridgewater to do well. So I hope Teddy Bridgewater does well. They brought in wide receivers Roby Anderson and Seth Roberts. They re-signed safety Trey Boston, and in the draft they went defense. I mean, in the first round they selected defensive tackle Derek Brown out of Auburn. In the second round, they selected defensive end Yetur Gross-Matos out of Penn State. In the second round, again with the second round pick, they selected safety Jeremy Chin out of Southern Illinois. Every pick for the Panthers in the draft was defense. Every last one of them. And so that shows you where their focus is this offseason. And I want to see how Teddy works out in this offense, but they have a lot less talent than he had in New Orleans when he had that amazing undefeated run last year while he was filling in for Drew Brees. And so I'm really eager to see how he fares with this Carolina offense. I know they have Christian McCaffrey, who's probably going to take most of the load off of Teddy's shoulders, but I'm really hoping Teddy has a good year. I just really am. And he's also dealing with a very young defense. They have Brian Burns. They have a lot of young players on that defense. They obviously spend a lot of resources on their defense this offseason with more young players. And so this will be more of a growth and identity finding season for the Carolina Panthers. And with that being said, we are now ready for the NFC South standings. And in first place at 12-4, 5-1 in the division, we have the New Orleans Saints. At number 2 at 10-6, 4-2 in the division, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At number 3 at 5-11, 2-4 in the division, the Atlanta Falcons. And at number 4, 5-11, 1-5 in the division, the Carolina Panthers. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you agree with the standings? Do you think the Bucs will be better than the Saints this year and win the division? Let me know. I look forward to seeing it. It's a possibility. See you there.